They may recognize your resilience, your wisdom, your grace under pressure, but whether they do or not is secondary. Because the purpose of leadership isn't to be seen, it's to serve, to carry weight most people don't want, to make decisions that cost you comfort, and to do it all without needing recognition in return. So when you stand alone, when the path feels quiet and the burden feels heavy, remember this. You're not weak for wearing the mask. You're not inauthentic for protecting your peace. You're not fake for showing restraint when everything inside you feels like breaking. You're just leading quietly, steadily from a place the world rarely sees, but always feels. And if you've built yourself in the dark with discipline, with intention, with clarity, then no matter how loud the world becomes, you'll never be moved by it. Because the strongest leaders never began with applause. They began with silence, with doubt, with solitude. And through it all, they became something few ever dare to be, unshakable. Solitude isn't about escaping the world, it's about returning to yourself. In a time where distractions are endless, being alone with your own thoughts is often viewed as uncomfortable, even dangerous. But the truth is, the discomfort we feel in solitude isn't because we're alone. It's because we're finally facing what's inside, the noise we try to drown out with conversations, entertainment, and obligations. That noise is often coming from within, and in solitude, there's no one left to blame, no one to validate, no one to perform for. It's just you and what you've avoided. That's why so many run from it. But the powerful, they walk toward it. To be fully present with yourself is one of the rarest forms of courage. Because there's no mask to wear when no one is watching. There's no role to play. What's left is the raw material, the insecurities, the fears, the doubts, and the responsibility to sort through them. This is where refinement begins. This is where clarity is born. When you give yourself permission to sit in stillness, to ask uncomfortable questions without flinching, you start to realize that solitude isn't a punishment. It's a tool, a mirror, and often the only place where truth has room to rise. The world rewards those who are loud, busy, and constantly seen. But wisdom grows in the unseen moments. The real decisions, the ones that change your life, are rarely made in crowded rooms. They're made in quiet reflection. That's the paradox. The people who seem to move the world are often the ones who spend the most time away from it alone. Not because they hate people, but because they know power comes from understanding their own mind before being influenced by others. There's a kind of strength that only silence can build. When you stop needing the presence of others to feel valuable, everything changes. It's not that relationships or connections become meaningless, they become clearer. You stop chasing people who were never meant to stay. You stop bending to please crowds that don't care. And instead, you begin to attract those who recognize the stillness in you. People are drawn to those who don't need them to feel whole. That's what makes solitude magnetic. It reveals the difference between attachment and connection. The most powerful decisions are often made in solitude. The quiet choice to walk away, the difficult decision to let go, the moment of clarity that changes the entire direction of your life. These things rarely happen in chaos. They require space and the ability to hear your own voice without it being drowned by the opinions of the world. When you learn to retreat into yourself, not as an escape, but as a practice, you begin to uncover a version of you that doesn't rely on approval. A version that knows, that listens, that leads. And awakening doesn't come from being surrounded. It comes from being still, from noticing your thoughts without judgment, from facing what's been buried beneath your constant motion, from accepting that growth often begins where comfort ends. Solitude is the place where you meet your future self, not the version shaped by noise, but the one forged in silence. People often confuse being alone with being lonely, but they're not the same. Loneliness is the ache for something outside of you. Solitude is the comfort in knowing you have everything you need within. When you start to feel at home in your own mind, external validation loses its grip. You don't chase attention because you're already seen by the one who matters most, you. You don't beg for love because you've given it to yourself first. And from that fullness, everything else becomes a choice, not a need. You begin to notice how the quiet reorganizes your thoughts, how it reveals what actually matters. You see the patterns that used to control you, the stories you've told yourself, the roles you've played, and slowly you start to rewrite them. In solitude, you don't just think, you evolve. You step away from who the world told you to be and return to who you were before it all got noisy. You shed layers that never belonged to you, and what remains is honest, clear, powerful. The ability to be alone and still feel whole is a superpower. In a world obsessed with connection, the person who is content in their own company holds the upper hand. They aren't moved by gossip. They don't shrink under pressure. They respond rather than react. They carry a calmness that can't be faked. Because it was built in the dark, sharpened in the silence, and proven in the moments when no one was watching. You'll find that solitude doesn't make you harder, it makes you wiser. You become more intentional with your words, more aware of your energy, more protective of your peace. You stop offering explanations to people who were never listening. You stop proving yourself to those who doubted you. And instead you live quietly, deliberately, authentically. Because once you've tasted the clarity of solitude, the noise of the world becomes optional. Marcus Aurelius said it best. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. That retreat is always there, waiting, not for the perfect moment, not for permission, but for you to choose it, to step away from the endless noise and return to the source yourself. Because no matter where life takes you, your most powerful ally will always be the part of you that can sit in silence and still stand tall. So the next time the world feels overwhelming, don't run toward more noise. Don't fill your time with what's easy. Step back, be still. Listen not to the world, but to the quiet voice inside you that knows who you are. That voice may be soft, but it's never wrong. It's the compass in the chaos, the foundation under pressure, the strength that no one sees, but everyone eventually feels. You don't need a crowd to be complete, you need clarity. And clarity often comes wrapped in silence, in solitude, in the moments that look like nothing on the outside, but shift everything within. That's where the powerful are made. Not on stages, not in rooms filled with praise, but in the quiet where they remember who they are without the world telling them who they should be. There's a strange pressure in today's world to always be saying something to explain, to react, to defend, to clarify, as if every pausing conversation is a missed opportunity or every unspoken thought is a weakness. But silence isn't weakness. It isn't the absence of thought. In fact, it's often the presence of deeper thought. The more powerful someone becomes, the more they learn this truth. Not everything requires a response. Not every rumor deserves your breath. And not every opinion needs your correction. Silence in its truest form is not avoidance, it's strategy. People fear what they can't read. And nothing is harder to read than someone who doesn't react. Someone who doesn't rush to prove their side, doesn't scramble to fix perceptions, doesn't panic when misunderstood. In silence, there is control. Control over your energy, control over your image, control over the battlefield itself. Because when you're silent, the other side starts guessing. And in their guessing, they reveal more about themselves than you ever could by speaking. That's the brilliance of stillness. It's not passive, it's surgical. But silence takes discipline. It's tempting to explain yourself, to want to be seen and understood, to correct every wrong impression. But power doesn't need to be understood, it needs to be unshaken. The moment you start chasing clarity from others, you give them control over your state. Silence breaks that cycle. It places the burden of interpretation on them while you stay centered in your own calm. And that calm, that's your fortress. Because the louder the world becomes, the more rare and valuable your silence becomes. We live in a time where everyone has a microphone, everyone has a platform, but few have the strength to say nothing when it matters most. To let actions speak, to let presence carry weight. It's easy to shout, it's easy to react, it's easy to flood the space with noise. But the one who remains quiet when others are loud, who observes while others scramble to be seen, that's the one people start watching more closely, not because they're hidden, but because they're unreadable. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely," and that's what silence often demands. Acceptance, the kind that says, "I don't need your version of me to be whole." You begin to understand that silence is not the void. It's the container, the space where you decide what enters and what doesn't, what matters and what doesn't, who you engage and who you leave unanswered. That's not arrogance, it's focus. Silence also gives you time to think clearly, to separate emotion from principle, to decide if speaking would actually serve you or just satisfy your ego.